her father would die if she failed to figure out how to pacify her spirit husband. Once upon a time, in a village far south, lived a princess named Ejiro. Princess Ejiro was the only daughter of a very notable king. She was her father's favorite daughter who had never stepped her foot outside of her father's palace. All her life, Princess Ejiro had been prohibited from leaving the palace as her father warned her sternly never to leave to avoid a great calamity from befalling her. The princess never understood why she was confined to the four walls of the palace, as her father only told her that their tradition forbids her from leaving the palace. He also made it clear that if the princess ever left the palace, she would bear the consequences of her actions. All her life, the princess wondered how her village looked, as all she had grown up to see were the palace grounds. One day, Princess Ejiro overheard some palace maidens talking about the upcoming village festival, which was a few days away. She wondered what it would feel like to be present at the festival, and the thought of this beclouded her thinking. Princess Ejiro then decided to go against her father's wishes by attending the festival in a bid to satisfy her curiosity. The princess dressed like a palace maiden to disguise herself as she snuck out of the palace grounds unnoticed. She trailed the other maidens who were all heading to the festival ground as her heart raced in excitement. They arrived the festival ground and the princess was confronted by a multitude of people who were merrying and dancing. This filled her with so much joy as she joined in the jubilation. Princess Ejiro was finally happy to be free, as all her life she had never witnessed freedom of this magnitude. She danced to her heart's content and bumped into a very handsome man who smiled and asked if the princess was new to the village, as he had never seen her before. Princess Ejiro smiled and was about replying the handsome man when suddenly the man held his throat as though he was about to choke. The young man then fell to the ground, and when the villagers ran to check on him, they confirmed that he was dead. Princess Ejiro, on seeing what had happened, rushed back to the palace before anyone would notice that she was away. By morning, the news of the young man's mysterious death spread around the village, reaching the ears of the king, who wondered what could have killed the vibrant young man. Word then began to circulate that the young man died in the hands of a witch who dressed like a palace maiden. They had seen him talking to a strange girl when he collapsed, and everyone pointed to the palace for answers. The king and his cabinet all wondered who this palace maiden was and called an emergency meeting of the maidens in the palace to ascertain who the culprit was. After hours of interrogation, none of the maidens owned up to what had happened, and the king, in anger, proclaimed that all the maidens be sent into the forest of the ancestors, as this was a way to ascertain who the liar was amongst them. In their village, when a person commits a heinous crime and they deny ever committing such a crime, they are sent into the forest of the ancestors, and if after a few days they return alive, then it will be evident that they were telling the truth all along. But if they never return, then it will be clear to everyone in the village that they were lying. Princess Ejiro overheard her father's decision to send the palace maidens into the forest of the ancestors. She was too scared to own up to what she did, so she kept quiet and did nothing. The maidens were then sent into the forest of the ancestors, and after a few days, they all returned unharmed. Princess Ejiro, unsure of what would happen to her if her father realized that she was the maiden he was looking for, locked herself up in her room and never came out. A few days passed, and a palace maiden came in to inform the princess that her father had requested her presence. Princess Ejiro's heart raced as she walked gently to her father's throne room. When she arrived at her father's presence, she met her father, the king, who asked how she was doing following all the recent happenings in their kingdom. Her father then went on to reveal that her freedom was so close. He told her that time had come for her to choose her groom, as only then would she be free to leave the palace. Princess Ejiro was extremely happy to hear this. Her father then went on to inform her that within the coming days, she would be presented with a choice of eligible bachelors who would be all interested in being her groom. Then she will have to choose amongst the men the man that she will spend the rest of her life with, and the princess was overjoyed to hear this from her father. She returned to her room happy as she fantasized what her life would be like, free and able to leave the palace without any restrictions. As the days went by, all the eligible bachelors of the village came forward to declare their interest in marrying the princess. They all could not wait to finally see what the princess looked like, as she had been an illusion to them all their lives. The day of the unveiling arrived, and the princess was dressed in a very beautiful dress. She looked so beautiful and could not wait to see the men that wanted her for a wife. She waited in her chamber patiently till her father called out for her at the banqueting hall. Princess Ejiro walked gracefully into the hall, and when the young men set their eyes on her, they all fell to the ground and fell into a very deep sleep. All efforts to wake them up proved abortive, so their families came in and carried them away. Everyone, including the king, froze as they watched the young men being taken away. This was the beginning of Princess Ejiro's nightmare. She ran as fast as she could away from the banqueting hall, screaming in terror. Princess Ejiro could not understand what was happening, so she locked herself up in her room as she shook in fear. Her father, the king, in a bid to understand what had just happened, consulted with the chief priest of the village, who informed him that Princess Ejiro was behind what had happened. The gods then revealed that Princess Ejiro went against the age-long covenant that had been standing between the royal household and the village ancestors. The covenant stated that no first child of the king should ever step their foot out of the palace until after their marriage ceremony. Because the princess broke this rule, she brought the wrath of the spirits upon herself. The chief priest went on to tell the king that Princess Ejiro had already been bound in marriage to the spirit of the young man that she caused his death at the festival, and that the young man's spirit was behind what happened to the men who came to marry her in the palace. The king screamed in pain as he could not believe the calamity his beloved daughter had brought upon herself. He asked his chief priest what could be done to salvage the situation, and the chief priest revealed that the princess holds the answer to her freedom. Princess Ejiro cried profusely in her room, saying, "If only I waited a few more days, I would have been free without bringing all this calamity upon myself." The princess was filled with regret as she wondered what would become of her now. After a few minutes, a maiden came in to inform the princess that her father had requested for her presence. Princess Ejiro, filled with fear, walked gently to her father's throne room. She feared what her father would do to her, as she knew that by now her father would have consulted his chief priest about the whole issue. "You left the palace grounds against my instruction," the king said with disappointment written all over his face. "I am sorry, father. I heard of the village festival and wanted to experience it for myself," Princess Ejiro said as she began to weep profusely. Her father, still disappointed, informed her that she was now married to the spirit of the young man she caused his death at the festival, and that the young man was the one behind what happened today at the palace. Princess Ejiro could not believe her ears. "How is this possible, father?" she asked with confusion written all over her face, and her father explained to her that according to the age-long covenant, anyone that breaks the covenant and steps his or her foot out of the palace would be cursed, and that anyone who picks an interest in them will die, and they will be bound in marriage with the person's spirit. Princess Ejiro was puzzled and asked her father what she could do. Her father then revealed to her that she held the answer to her freedom. Princess Ejiro returned to her room confused. She stared blankly into the distance as she was lost in her own thoughts. She could not believe all that her father had said and decided to sleep, as she hoped that she would sleep and wake up from the terrible nightmare. Princess Ejiro drifted into a very deep sleep. In her dream, she met the man at the festival in a forest as he smiled and walked towards her. Princess Ejiro found herself so agitated in the dream as she rebuked the man, asking him to leave her alone as he had ruined her entire life. This infuriated the young man, who stormed out on her angrily, causing Princess Ejiro to wake up from her dream. The princess woke up so angry and made up her mind to deal with the man if he ever appeared to her in her dreams again. That same night, the young man appeared to the princess once again, and this time the princess slapped him so hard, warning him never to appear to her in her dreams. For weeks, the princess had a peaceful sleep as she never saw the man again. This was such a relief to the princess as things seemed to be getting better. One morning, the princess was still asleep in her room when a maiden rushed in to inform her that her father was dying. The princess ran as fast as she could, and when she arrived at her father's chamber, she met the chief priest, who told her that her father would die if she failed to figure out how to pacify her spirit husband. The princess was shocked to hear this and pleaded with the chief priest to help her, as she did not want her father to die. The chief priest then told her to go make peace with her spirit husband, because if she failed to do so, her dear father the king would die. Princess Ejiro returned to her room panicking as she began to plead with the spirit not to kill her father. She spent hours pleading with the spirit to show himself in her dream, but anytime she went to bed, the spirit never appeared. For several days, Princess Ejiro pleaded with the spirit, but still it never graced her with its presence. The king's condition was worsening, and the princess could not stand to see her father suffer any longer. She decided to end it all, as she believed that doing so would put an end to the calamity that had befallen her dear family. Princess Ejiro sat on the floor as she asked the spirit one more time for forgiveness, saying that she had been left with no other option than to end it all, as the spirit had decided not to forgive her. Immediately, Princess Ejiro fell into a very deep sleep and saw the young man's spirit in the forest, which told her never to kill herself. The spirit told her that he that is dead wished to be alive, and that Princess Ejiro should never take that which she cannot give. This brought the princess to tears as she apologized to the spirit from her heart, asking him to forgive her for what she did to him unknowingly. The princess also pleaded with the spirit to release her from the bond of marriage and spare the life of her dear father, as well as the young men that were still sleeping in their various homes. The spirit, sensing that the princess was genuinely sorry, forgave her and granted all her wishes. Princess Ejiro was so grateful to the spirit as she thanked him for his forgiveness. She woke up so happy and rushed off to her father's chamber to notify him of what had just happened. To her greatest surprise, when the princess approached her father's chamber, she noticed that her father was no longer sick. Joy filled her heart as the dark days were finally over. That was how Princess Ejiro regained her freedom and was no longer tied in marriage with the spirit. She lived the remaining of her life happy as she finally got married to a prince from a faraway village. The lesson to be learned from this story is that patience is a virtue. In life, we should learn to be patient in whatever we do, as with patience, one can avoid making hasty decisions that may affect one's life negatively. One moment of patience may ward off great disaster, whilst one moment of impatience may ruin one's life forever. I hope you enjoyed the story. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.